Good afternoon, Council and guests. We're going to start our 3:30 Council meeting with a territorial acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, land on which we are broadcasting from, is the land traditionally cared for by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. We also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. A moment of reflection. At the beginning of this council meeting, we pause to think about the needs of our community. May we show wisdom and compassion in all our decisions. I'm going to just ask if there's a disclosure of pecuniary interest and a general nature thereof, Council. Councillors Waterloo and Vasic, any pecuniary interest to declare? No? Okay, great. Thank you. At this point, I just wanted to see if someone's willing to move the minutes of the April 17th council meeting, moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Bodley. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. On to the consent motion. There's a number of items in the consent motion. Looking to see if council would like to remove any of those items or if someone's interested to move it as one group. Moved by Councillor Vasic, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. That's the consent agenda. We're on to staff reports. The first is the 2022 review of the museum operations, and I believe Karen Vanderbrink is here and she has a presentation for us. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you. It's been a while. Let's see if I can get this to go. Oh, no. There we go. Wonderful. Well, good afternoon, Councillor Freeman and Chair and the rest of Council. Every year, for those of you who are new onto Council, I come before you and give you a update of our activities for the year. And so this year is obviously our 2022 operations, a year in review. Part of the reason why I do so is that is part of the meeting the provincial museum standards for community museums. And as council, you are my direct board. So I will come and give you a little update of what we do. This year I thought I would do it a little bit differently because there are so many new faces on council, and perhaps some of you have not had an opportunity to visit the museum. So I thought I would do a little bit of a review and also a little bit of a Museum 101 for you this afternoon. So this works. So first of all, I'd like to introduce the museum team to you all. Of course, there's myself, that I have been with the museum and with the city since 2007, but also prior to that, I have started my museum career out as a child volunteer in my hometown. So I have had many, many years of working in museums. Our collections and exhibit person is Yinny Hartman, who you see there in the middle. And Yinny is a longtime resident. She grew up on McDougall Ave in Waterloo, and she began her career in museums at Schneider House in Kitchener. And so Yinny takes care of all of our collections and exhibits work. And then we have our newest team member, Jennifer Huber, who some of you may have met her out and about in the community. She started her career at the Ken Sealing region of Waterloo Museum, and she now heads up our program and our engagement and programs. So combined, we have over 60 years of experience, which is, wow, that's a lot. I think I probably weigh in the heaviest with that. So the City of Waterloo Museum also likes to make opportunities for emerging museum professionals, and we do so by leveraging grants for seasonal staff. And in 2002, we were fortunate to receive support through the Young Canada Works grant for students in heritage. And we hired 2 students. We have Stuart Murray, who's on the end there, and Livia Picado Swan. And I'll tell you a little bit about some of the projects that they worked on during their 14-week placement. And then we also had Julia Barkley, who started with us as a summer student, and we were fortunate enough to hire her on contract over 2022 to help support us with launching our new website. So the museum itself was established in 2009. However, the city had a collection prior to that. The offices were up at the Canadian Clay and Glass Gallery, and so was the collection. But in 2009, we actually had the opportunity to have a community museum with the partnership at Conestoga Mall. So we have 4,000 square feet of exhibition and collection storage. And actually, we were the first museum to operate in a shopping mall in Canada, so we're pretty proud of that. And last year, despite being closed a couple of times, or for a few months over the year, we were still able to welcome just over 4,000 people in the doors of the museum. So as I said, at one point, the collection actually came in 1997 when the Seagram Museum closed. And the City of Waterloo accepted a large portion of that signature Seagram collection that consists of items related to the service and manufacturing of distilled spirits and our local distillery. The collection also contains items that are related to our local history, and all things that are uniquely Waterloo. And the collection is held in public trust and consists of over 20,000 objects and archival materials. Not all of our objects are able to be stored at the mall, so we also keep many of our oversized pieces in an off-site storage facility, including the 1919 one-of-a-kind Pierce Arrow truck. So this past summer, we undertook some research and preservation. We have a very large collection of scientific and lab objects, which had not had a lot of research done on them. So the team of Stuart and Livia, we mentored them and worked with them to do some research and update our collections register. So each object in the collection is assigned a catalog number, and that catalog number is entered into a collection database that we keep, along with a photograph of the object, and then any research information of where it came from, who donated it to us, and its relevance to the collection. So this summer, over 250 objects were processed on this project. So that has increased what we can do with the items to put them on display and exhibit them. It helps us out quite a bit. And then in addition, you probably, if you read the report, we added close to 400 new objects to the collection. And the way we collect is we rely on donations from the public, and our collecting is guided by policies. So within the museum standards, we have a suite of 10 policies that guide the work that we do, that the province sets out. So programming, we had a lot of program and outreach last year. So most of our programming that we do at the museum, because of our limited space, you'll often find us out in the community doing our programs. So in 2022, we delivered a combination of in-person and virtual programs that totaled over 15,000 interactions. So some of these were in partnership. For example, the one virtual program that we did because of the exhibit that we had on at the time, which was Health and Space. We partnered with the International Women's Air and Space Museum to deliver a virtual program. Then also we were out in the community delivering programs. We partnered with Waterloo Public Library for their amazing Race Rum Runners edition, which is a bit of a tongue twister. We also programmed the Log Schoolhouse and the Grist Mill. And we also partnered with Arts and Culture on art walk tours. Our cemetery tours still are very popular, and we will be doing some more this summer with different themes. And we also offered another History on Wheels bike tour. So those are some of the programs that we've done. Special projects that we undertook last year. Probably our biggest one was the architecture and creation of our new museum website, which we're pretty proud of. There's lots of online interactions you can do with the collection. We have online exhibits, and we add to that consistently. We also had our Hear Our Stories podcast project that we did. That we collaborated with the University of Toronto Masters of Museum Studies students. We also presented for Waterloo our Show Me the City, which was a walk down King Street this year. We collaborated with the new community pavilion staff there to put in an exhibit for their opening, and then also we did the large poppy project, which was a community project that we will be repeating again this year. So we also hope to expand that to also do a similar installation of poppies here at City Hall. And we also changed the exhibits downstairs. We have one case down there, down in the atrium, and up here outside council chambers. Well, for events last year, all I can say is we had them here first. And that is Canada's Next Astronaut. We were very, very excited when the announcement came that Jeremy Hansen was selected for the Artemis 2 mission to orbit the moon and would be part of the crew. And he was here in Waterloo last year for our very first STEAM fair of exhibitors, which we partnered with the universities and other companies that contribute to space research and education. And we held that at the Waterloo Recreation Complex, and over 600 people attended our event that day. We will also be doing another similar event. This year we're going to be doing it in Conestoga Mall, and it will be in conjunction with our next traveling exhibit coming in, which is called Cipher to Cipher. So it's all about coding. And then, of course, we also participated in the ever so popular Lumen, and we were all about constellations this past year. Our exhibits. So the beginning of the year, we had the Many Shapes of Clay, which closed down in April. Then we had Health and Space, which was over the summer. And then currently we have the ever popular Rock This Town Music and Memories that will close in June. So if you haven't come and visit. So I'll just leave you with a little visitor feedback that we've had off of Google. Love the Health and Space exhibit. The staff was very helpful. I had 2 8-year-olds and a 6-year-old. They loved it as well. Small space. Apparently they cycle displays every few months. Some interactive displays. I spent an hour playing vinyl records. Staff was fun and knowledgeable. Diverse, well-researched, and very interesting. And so all I would like to say is thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And our team are looking forward to working with the new council and seeing you out at some of our many events. So yeah.
Thank you, Karen. Questions, council? Mayor McCabe. Oh, Mary Lou?
Through you, Chair. I actually don't have a question, but I just wanted to say how impressed I was through the report of all the new followers. And I mean, I specifically noted the social media followers, the number of new visits to the museum as a result, and the 7,000 views of Show Me the City. So I was just loving those numbers. So well done.
Thank you.
Mayor McCabe?
Yeah, similarly, through you, Chair, to Karen, I would just reinforce her ending comment about if you haven't been out to go to the Rock This Town exhibit, it's really fun. And for me, it was just really interesting and in some cases surprising to see, reconnect about all the music that's started here or has come through here, and and to play vinyl records, and that again was really cool. So I also just wanted to say thank you for the support that you provide and the information you provided for my recent State of the City. I went out and Tim and I visited the museum in January, I think, or December. I forget. Yeah. It was cold.
It was cold.
But it really was fascinating to see the different collections and to meet your team there. And and it sparked a lot of ideas for me. And I just appreciate the information that you provided through my recent State of the City. So thanks for all the work you do and the history that you bring alive for people in Waterloo and beyond.
Thank you. Yes, I will bring those back to the team and share those kind words with them. So we look forward to and I mean, if you haven't seen Rock This Town, there's something for everyone. We do have a number of different formats and different things that if you have kids or even yourself, I mean, it's a lot of great nostalgia that happens there in the exhibit. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wright.
Sorry, I just want to get the last word in here through you, Chair. First of all, it's nice to see you in person rather than just online. And secondly, I just want to mark the moment that we're in, where we're working towards finalizing the city's strategic plan, and obviously there's a arts and culture plan forthcoming. And so I wondered whether you would leave us with a thought about what you're hopeful and excited about for this term.
Yikes. Well, I think for us as a team is, we're here as a resource. We have so many resources for us, and just I think our strength is our creativity and what we can bring and how we can collaborate with so many different groups throughout our city, and that's one thing that we really enjoy is that partnership and collaboration. Not only our internal teams, we work with Built Heritage and Arts and Culture to bring all of these spaces and places to life, and even just and as a passive way along King Street with our Show Me the City. Right now we have one with Chinese heritage, and we are, it's been another great layer that we have a couple irons in the fire with some other artists that have approached us about after seeing that. So you never know, if you have an idea, bring it to our team, and I know our creativity, we can make something out of it. So just keeping us here as a community and being something for everyone. So I think that's one of our strengths, is the fact that we have a museum that the admission is free, and I think that itself is also being accessible. So we are accessible for our community. So that's important to us. Thanks.
Thank you for that. I also was going to comment on Rock This Town, so that doesn't need to be repeated. So Council, there's a recommendation for your consideration. Is there someone interested to move that? Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Wright. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. The next report is the allocation of the 2022 surplus with Mr. Hedinga. I don't think there's a presentation. He's just here for questions. Any questions? Councillor Bodley?
Thank you through you, Chair Freeman. Really appreciate this report and also the forthcoming report on the Q1 projection. Finance staff have done a really excellent job throughout, sort of navigating us throughout COVID to let us know sort of where we're at from a financial perspective and the risks and the challenges. And so I just wanted to take some time to thank finance staff for helping us navigate that as a council. My question on the surplus allocation report is thinking ahead to some of the pressures that we have related to our climate action reserve fund and how we are going to be funding that fund. Wow. Going forward, I'm curious if staff have given any thought to whether future surpluses or future policies that we have in place from a financial perspective that may be directing funds to CURF might be looked at in the future of some percentage of that going into the Climate Action Reserve Fund to help sort of get that up and going.
Thank you, Councillor Bodley. Great question. We will be looking at both the surplus allocation policy, which currently allocates to tax rate stave and capital investment reserve, and potentially adding CARF to that when we look at that in the late fall when that comes back to council. And we'll also be looking at other policies that could contribute to that reserve as well.
Any additional questions, Council? Councillor Wright?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I am just curious about the staffing vacancies, because I noted in the report that many of the surpluses that were reported were partially due to staffing vacancies. And my question is really only tied to our ability to forecast during these uncertain labor times. Are we seeing any sort of resolution to some of that staffing churn? Is that going to trend down in terms of the next reporting period, or is that something that's sort of a sustained factor is my only question.
Thank you, Councillor. Good question. The vacancies throughout the organization there tends to be a certain threshold that exists each year. So I think what we're seeing is probably kind of a sustainable vacancy level that tends to occur from year to year. There has been some challenges post COVID with increased levels of vacancies in definitely in lower level positions. We are seeing increased levels, but maybe bring Brad on. I think I'm not sure I think the number is less in the 23 report than it was in 22, but I'll leave that to Brad to confirm.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Through you, Chair Freeman. The vacancy levels in 2023 are a little bit lower than they were maybe throughout 2022, but maybe I could just put in a comment for the human resources team and all the work that they're doing, kind of processing different vacancies and then also recruitment for new positions. I will acknowledge that there's a large volume that they're working through as quickly as they can, but each recruitment can take a fair bit of time, and then depending on the successful candidates, sometimes we're having to go back out to the market a couple times. So it's an ongoing challenge that we're working through. From a financial perspective, there are some temporary savings when we have those vacancies, which are referred to in the report, and then we follow policy there. But I think the larger challenge is working without those resources for a period of time. So I know that the HR team is doing all they can to fill them as soon as possible, but it is something to keep an eye on moving forward.
Any additional questions, Council? So there's a series of recommendations for approval. Is Council comfortable approving them in one motion? Yeah. Moved by Councillor Bodley, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next is Mr. Witzel. He's still with us. It's the 2023 Q1 surplus deficit projection. and the report is in your packet. Any questions, council? There's again a recommendation here. If I have a mover, moved by Councillor Roach, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. The COVID relief CIP fund reallocation. Again, this is Joseph, who's with us here. Any questions on this report, council? Councillor Vasek.
Thanks through you, Chair Freeman. Yeah, a couple of questions. Can you tell me how much was how much the ask was last time for the reallocation for the arts and culture CIP? Because last time, yes, for new council members, there was a reallocation last time for $150,000. So can you tell us a little bit about what the applications came in at?
Sure, I can maybe start and then turn it over to Estero. Last time we provided $150,000 of surplus funding from the COVID relief CIP, and it was for the KCIs and some affiliates. We know that there was some excess demand, and it covered a good portion of it, but Estero, if you have any more info on some of the more details there.
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Vasek, we received just over $340,000 in requests last year through the COVID Recovery Grant Program. So we were able to fund $150,000 that represented really urgent need from organizations that just needed to keep the doors open. But we were not able to fund any requests that would have supported growth of any of those organizations.
Do you have any sense of what might come in this time?
Through the chair to Councillor Vasek, to be honest, we have no idea. We know that organizations are still struggling significantly. Costs have increased substantially. And we know that a lot of our organizations are still struggling to recover sponsorship and donations and support from private sector. So we anticipate that the asks will probably be very similar.
Okay, thanks. And then for the $250,000 that would be returned to the Uptown CIP, what do you think the uptake on that will be?
Well, throughout the past couple of years, we've seen some growing demand for that program, especially since COVID started. Actually, we've seen year-over-year increase and upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Last year was $115,000, and there was about 15 applicants. So I think if it keeps trending the way it's trending, we'll see something similar, maybe increased demand. So yeah. Thank you.
And from my understanding from the report, it primarily is meant for accessibility needs. Is that right?
Correct. We're going to be focusing on improving accessibility in Uptown. We've heard from some business owners and some staff that there is a need to increase accessibility, and so we're going to be, promoting some accessibility expenditures through expenses that are already eligible through the program. So we're going to try and work on that and see if we can improve Uptown in that way. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And what's the timeline on the uptake of the $250,000? What I'm ultimately getting at is how can we increase the $150,000 to KCIs and affiliates? Ultimately, that's what I want to know, without taking away opportunities to increase accessibility Uptown. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I'll flip over my thing here. So I know that the demand for that program is obviously exceeding some of the funding that we have right now, but we felt that the proposed $150K found a balance in between the supporting some of the community needs and continuing what we have offering through our CIP program. But part of it was to maybe keep funding that program so that we could attract attention towards a future budget potentially, and maybe have some funding allocated to that program in the future. And maybe Justin can speak more on that.
Yeah, sure. Through you, Chair Freeman. So the $250K is is basically we're proposing to put that back into the reserve. I think what's important to note is that that's a one-time piece of funding that would then sustain it over many years going forward. There is a little bit of funding in there today, so I think it would take the Uptown to reserve to around 500K, but there's not a lot of sustainable funding annually going into that reserve. So that would kind of be what's there to do it, kind of for the future. The 150K is really, it looks like a much bigger amount, but it's for 1 year, and the 250 is over time. So from that, that's kind of one of the key sort of considerations that we're thinking about. And sorry, the first part of your question around.
I mean, I can't remember what but what I'd like to do is to make sure that there's enough accessibility money for Uptown. But I appreciate what you're saying, which is that this is potentially over time. But I mean, the ask was more than twice the amount that we're putting in, right? And we're going to get the same ask for arts and culture, likely for the CIP. And so, or not CIP, the KCIs, whatever that's called. So, I appreciate the challenges, and I realize there's probably not much wiggle room, but I guess what I'm wondering is, are there any mechanisms for will you be coming back to us about what the uptake is for the 250? Even though I understand that if it's not just for accessibility, people might ultimately apply for something different, and you want to keep it in there because it's over time. Yeah. So how will you report back? How can we get more than 150,000 for the KCIs and affiliates?
So I mean, I think council could decide today if they wanted to sort of change that mix around a little bit. What we're trying to demonstrate, though, is that there's a need for, and we'll certainly know that from this go around with the 150. Andrea did a report last year that kind of outlined kind of where all that money went, and the same report would come to council again. Really informing the budget process was what we're hoping for the 3-year cycle, where council could maybe look at some sustainable funding as an option going forward, knowing that there is obviously a need that we've proven through this transfer of funds from the last 2 years. Council could sort of change that those numbers around a little bit right here if they would like. I think what we're trying to do is make sure that we have sustainable funding for the Uptown. The focus on accessibility is new. Technically, people could have applied for funding for accessibility, but we're changing kind of the promotion around it. So we may see a little bit of uptake that we're not expecting over that. So we're just kind of trying to balance everything and make sure that we're sort of covering both ends. But it is an inexact science, and certainly moving some of those numbers around today probably wouldn't upset things too much on kind of the accessibility front and the Uptown CIP front.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that you can't actually know, and it may be immaterial. And I saw a post from a local musician who said that this person met the person who invented or advocated for ramps to go into stores, and it was because of that this person got to play a show at the Jazz Room. So it's not that accessibility won't also promote arts and culture; it's just the dollar amount. And so. I didn't quite have enough time to digest what you said in the email, because I did ask you about this before. But you would need, if we wanted to increase this at all, you would need a specific dollar amount. You can't go away with some flexibility to increase should there be an obvious need from arts and culture organizations.
That was my sort of quick take on it. I didn't have a chance to consult with finance, but we do have finance in the room here, and I think Brad was copied on that email, so he could probably provide his expert opinion.
Thank you. Through Chair Freeman, I guess I'll just start by offering that the Uptown Community Improvement Plan in the capital budget reference 101 is currently getting approximately 50,000 on an ongoing basis. So to give you a sense of the funding, and that's funded by the Economic Development Reserve. So what we have here is the surplus funding that originated in the Uptown CIP was, we'll say, loaned to the COVID CIP is now being returned to source. And so that's what finance staff would recommend. But as part of this, there's $150,000 that's being proposed to go to the KCIs. So if council's direction was to increase the amount that goes to the KCIs, it would need to come up as an offset as to what we return to the CIP, because as Justin noted, that these are one-time dollars. And so there is $313,000 in the Uptown project today. With the 250 coming, we're in that $550,000 ballpark, and then $50,000 currently budgeted on a go-forward basis. I think as they attest to, it's difficult to predict if they'll need it all or how quickly, but we are seeing some uptake. And so while accessibility is an important part of that program, there's also the general facade improvements and some other things in that program. So there is some flexibility if council would like to allocate more to KCIs, but then as a result, we would need to allocate less back to the project. So we would be looking for kind of firm figures today as a motion. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm usually more organized than this, but last week was really personally just chaotic. So I'm going to make a suggestion and look for your feedback. I'm not tied to it, but so $50,000 annually goes into the CIP that the 250 would go into. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, at this point in time, there's $50,000 annually with a little bit of inflation, but we haven't been releasing that because we're drawing down the existing balance. So if we put the full 250 of the project, we'd have 500 and change there, and that would allow us to defer releasing the funds that are in the capital budget. And for context, those funds are coming from the Economic Development Reserve. So what we've put in the budget is eventually these existing funds will be fully drawn down, and then to keep the program going, the Economic Development Reserve is funding it annually, but we haven't had to release those funds. So the other way of looking at it is we may need to release the budgeted funds a little bit sooner, and it's an economic development investment in the KCIs.
My vague recollection of the Economic Development Reserve is that it's pretty healthy right now.
Yes, there's, depends on what your definition of healthy is. Again, it's subjective. Yes, there's over $1 million in the Economic Development Reserve. The investments from the reserve have been infrequent over time, but they've usually been fairly material. I think our biggest investment, one single investment, was close to $700,000. So, it's and with the way that that's being funded, that's kind of what we'll see. We're not going to see a ton more money coming into that over the future. So I'm trying to be as cautious about how we leverage that reserve as possible. But again, I think we're probably talking about a number that's probably not significant to the active reserve.
And I think we know that the arts and culture economic impact to the city is quite substantial when we know from it's Explore Waterloo has it, or what's the metric that determines how much money comes back from arts and culture for economic development? You know how Lumen, it said it brought in like $4 million or something? What's the tool?
Through the chair to Councillor Vasek, the tool we used for calculating the economic impact for Lumen was based on numbers provided by Regional Tourism Organization 4.
So we know that arts and culture can bring in a lot. So I think it's a small investment. It's a gesture towards the arts and culture community that we also know might contribute to economic development. So it's the same and not the same, but it's they're aligned and I don't think it takes too much away from the 250 for other needs in Uptown, which I also believe are really important. I love Uptown. And you can let us know if that was truly the worst decision in the world because you suddenly had more uptake for the 250,000. But that's my case. Can I put that forward, please?
So I think I want to make sure I understand what you're asking for and how you want to modify the recommendation. I know that Mayor McCabe also wanted to ask questions, but do we want to get to the bottom of this first, or did you want to
It's
speak?
related, so
Okay.
just for can I do? Yeah, unless you want to put a direction or motion on the table and we can take questions after that.
So might I suggest that we hear what you wanted to say? then maybe I can look to staff to provide some advice on how we could modify the recommendation for council's consideration to achieve this. So I'll give you a couple of minutes as the mayor speaks. Alternatively, we can defer this motion for 1 week, give staff a chance to modify the recommendation to make sure we get it the way that council wants it. So, Mayor McCabe, I'm just going to let you speak to this and then.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Just for clarification, partly for newer members of council, I just wanted to clarify for the City of Waterloo what our key cultural institutions are. And then my other question is, with the facade and the accessibility improvements, is that a cost-shared program that the city puts some in, the businesses put, and the BIA puts some in, or is it just the city that's putting money in? Because that just, I think, would be helpful to know. And then if we were to put additional dollars in, is it possible to say, and I don't know that this is where you wanted to go, but is it possible to say additional money is tied to accessibility improvements, or that is just we put the money in and we let the businesses kind of decide what's best for their organization?
Through you, Councillor Freeman, to the mayor, I can answer the first part of that. So the four key cultural institutions that we provide funding to are, excuse me, Kitchener-Waterloo Art Gallery, Canadian Clay and Glass Gallery, KW Symphony, and the Museum in downtown Kitchener. In addition to the four KCIs, the COVID recovery grant would also be open to approximately 34 other community cultural organizations that we have affiliation agreements with. So those are service agreements that we have. And that is the same as the last intake of the COVID recovery program that we ran last year.
Okay, and the second part of your question, Mayor, was the splits, and it is 50-50, so all of the CIP investments are 50% city, 50% the business that's applying for those grants. They're split that way. And then the second part or the last part of your question.
I was wondering if and I don't know if this is what Councillor Vasic was thinking, but what I was wondering is if there is more money put in, could it be tied specifically to improving accessibility, or is it you put it in and the criteria is in place and you manage it?
Right. I think at this point, we're kind of the CIP, the structure of the CIP. It's a whole provincial process. It's pretty baked in terms of how it's structured. So we would just our intention is to promote it and try to derive some of the investment or the interest in that direction. In this particular case, we would be, I guess, sort of reducing the amount that would be available to support, the CIP piece. But like we said, I think we've got a reasonable amount of funding there to support, kind of what we've seen. And if there is this tremendous demand in the first year, I'm pretty confident that we've got enough to cover 1 year, and we could come back to council and ask for additional funding, perhaps, for the CIP in future if this was, this kind of redirect on the promotional side was tremendously successful. Then we could come back and ask for more funding. It's just difficult to kind of change the structure of the CIP, given the process you have to go through with the province to get it built in the first place. So adding more money is fine, but adding programs and modifying the CIP is a little bit more challenging and time consuming.
And just a comment to that. Thank you for all those answers. It was just I was at the Ontario. What's the N? The Ontario Network of Accessibility Professionals. A couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, and one of the things, there was a lot of questions around accessibility, and there's 450,000 businesses in Ontario and 25 provincial staff that actually investigate, whether they're complying with AODA and accessibility standards. And so the discussion turned to using the BIA and local businesses. That's really the way to get in and get get accessibility standards improved or met. So just something to think about when we're considering this.
All right, so let's see where we are at. Did you have a recommendation on a suggested alternative motion, Mr. Witzel?
Yeah, through you, Chair Freeman. All we would need to do is under 2A, it would be 200,000 to be returned to source to support the ongoing Uptown CIP, and then under B, it would be 200,000 to be used towards one-time support for the affiliates and key cultural institutions in 2023. So it would be 200,000 for both A and B. Should council support that motion?
Okay, so is that the motion you'd like to put on the table, Councillor Vasek?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
And is council clear on that change? Okay. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Wright, all in favor? That carries unanimously. The resource is split 50-50. All right. Thank you very much. And thank you for the questions. I think it's worthwhile to understand how the resources are utilized and how we want to allocate them. The next item is with regard to transportation infrastructure replacement and rehabilitation needs. We have Mr. Hodson and Ms. Pacey, and I understand that Ms. Pacey has just a quick intro to answer a few questions.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Freeman, or Chair Freeman. Mayor, members of
Sorry,
council.
can I just trouble you to move the microphone a little closer to your...
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair Freeman, Mayor, members of council, corporate management team, and the public. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. As Councillor Freeman mentioned, my name is Cassandra Pacey. I'm the manager of asset management. I'm here with Chris Hodgson, the manager of active and autonomous transportation, and we're here to give you a very brief introduction to our report. Through collaborative discussions between transportation, engineering services, and asset management, staff decided the optimal assets to rehabilitate with the increased infrastructure funding included in this report, $458,000, was a combination of trails and retaining walls. Based on information provided by asset management and professional management in transportation and parks, 8 sections of trails were identified for rehabilitation. The rehabilitation includes either resurfacing existing asphalt trails or modernizing stone dust trails to asphalt. The trails where asphalt is going to be added will allow for proper drainage, more effective maintenance while increasing the life of the trail and improving safety and accessibility. In addition to the trail improvements, 5 retaining walls were prioritized for replacement based on the information in the decision support system. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Chris, who will provide information on the trail and retaining wall locations.
Thank you, Cassandra, and through you, Chair Freeman. Apologies, I believe with hindsight, maybe we should have provided this information in the staff report. Lessons learned. So in a table format in front of you, we've listed the locations of the trails to be resurfaced. Spread across the city in several wards. These are, I say, before you, and I can show you some maps to follow just to give you some orientation. So just, I'm going to pause there just so you can see which ones are in your own wards, and then I'll move to the maps. So the first one is the Cedar Brae, obviously outlined in red there in Ward 3 Lakeshore. So that's south of Northfield there. The second is in Ward 1 in the Upper Beechwood area and links those trails just south of Columbia Street West. The next one is in Ward 6 and is around the Clare Lake Park area. That one is on the primary network from the Transportation Master Plan, just east of Fisher Holman. The next one is back up in Ward 3 and is just north of the Conservation Drive in the Conservation Meadows subdivision there. And the last one is in Ward 2, just north of Columbia, off of Gatestone Boulevard. In terms of retaining walls, there's 5, and they're spread between wards 3 and 5. And again, these were from the asset management's decision support system. And I've got a map for each of those just to give you some orientation. So there's 575 Glen Manor Boulevard in Ward 3. 196 Cedarbrae, again in Ward 3. 269 Parkmount, again in Ward 3. And moving to Ward 5 at Renault Drive there with number 140. And last but not least, in Glenridge Drive, just north of University Avenue there again in Ward 5. And we are happy to answer any questions that we may be able to.
Questions? Councillor Rowe?
Through you, Chair. Thank you so much. Just a quick question in terms of notifying the public. Do you notify them that you're going to be resurfacing the trails, etc., in advance? Or would you like your councillors to do that?
Through you, Chair Freeman, no, we will be working with our parks colleagues to get notices out to the public. We haven't yet because obviously we wanted to have this staff report approved.
That's great. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Seeing none, there's a recommendation here for council's consideration. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Bodley, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And we're on to the item F, award of 75-foot aerial fire truck. Everybody likes fire trucks. They're even more fun when they have an aerial on them. And so the reports here, Jay Kearing is with us to answer any questions that council might have. Any questions, council? Would someone like to move this motion? Moved by Councillor Hanmer, seconded by Councillor Roach. All those in favor, please go buy a fire truck. Thank you. And with that, council, we are going to recess and reconvene at 6:30. Thank you.